welcome to Lifehacker for the week of May 28th. With me is Adam Dotchis.
Hello.
WHITSON Gordon.
Hi.
Alan Henry is going to be joining us for a little bit, and I am Adam Pash. So we've got questions, we've got news to talk about, we've got some downloads for you. Without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so first thing, there's a post on Macworld/Computer World that I found kind of interesting about cell phone vibration syndrome, which is apparently a thing now that we call a syndrome. Actually, it sounds silly and it sounds sort of like trend PC, but it's actually like a real thing, and I think most people who have a cell phone have experienced this before. It's basically the sensation where you think that your phone is vibrating, say, in your pocket. It is not, but you check it anyway, kind of compulsively. It gives you that little jolt of short anxiety where you're like, oh, my phone, and then there's nothing there. We were talking about this a little bit earlier, and I think we came to the conclusion that, like, we first started experiencing this was like a normal thing for us when we had dumb phones, right?
Yeah,
like I
definitely got this all the time, phantom vibrations.
I think when I got the first iPhone, I started to get it, but as Whitson was saying, like, you actually would have more vibrations. It was actually real more
with the smartphone, yeah,
because there were always like notifications coming up.
It might be one of those things that you get used to after a while. Like after a few years of having a phone, you just kind of stop noticing it. But that's just us. It could be different for other people.
I used to get the phantom vibrations, but then I stopped using vibrations entirely, and not because of this syndrome, which I did not know about, but because I just didn't want my phone to bother me anymore.
Yeah.
And so I just normally have it off, and it's like, well, okay, so if someone misses me, then whatever.
Yeah. I mean, anyway, I think the interesting talking point here, though, for me at least, is just that this is, I think, a very real, like, normal thing that happens.
Yeah.
It's also one of the many reasons why we're so pro managing what is able to alert you and like really pruning your alerts on your phones to things that are actually meaningful and useful. Because it's silly, it's absurd, and it's a distraction every time. So if your phone's in your pocket, whether they're real vibrations or like phantom vibrations, unless you actually need that now, it's not good. Yeah. In my humble opinion.
I agree.
Well, it's amazing how you say, like, when it happens, you feel that, like, anxiety, like, I gotta look at my phone now, like, that's important.
Yeah.
When it's, like, more often than not, like, oh, some other guy liked my Facebook post or something, you know? It's just, like, not ever important. I get, like, 3 text messages a day or whatever that actually matter. Since I've gotten the iPhone especially, I've just taken a lot of things, and I still get the notifications, and I'll still get the badges and the banners, but I turn off the sound and vibration. So, like, if my phone's sitting next to me, I'll see it light up and see, right away that it's Facebook or something dumb, and I can ignore it. But then, if I'm out with my friends, I don't have things like badgering me to pull my phone out of my pocket and distance myself. Yeah, which is pretty nice. So it's like only text messages and personal emails or something.
That's cool. Why I turn it off, because I just don't want to.
But that explains why I can never get a hold of you.
I would. Yeah, no one can get a hold of me unless I'm by a computer, because then I see them. But.
I do like that idea, though, of just like I like the idea of doing sort of like vibration only. Like vibration is the separation for important.
Yeah. So I keep notifications on, and then but the one thing that bugs me about the iPhone is you can't turn off vibration and keep on sound. That doesn't on a notification by notification basis, where you can with Android. Yeah. That's one of those things I miss about Android. We should maybe write that up sometime, something along those lines. Anyway, in other news, Google Chrome. This is like kind of a huge deal. Google Chrome last week, for the first time ever, according to, I believe, StatCounter, which is a sort of web analytics tracking firm, Google Chrome became the #1, like, most popular, most used browser on the internet. Which is insane. That is pretty crazy.
It surpassed Internet Explorer, which of course has been dominant for
what's interesting? I think if you look at the international stats, if you look at it like by country, it's rising a little bit in the U.S., but it can't seem to get past Explorer, whereas in other countries, it's just like skyrocketed.
Yeah. Well, that might have something to do with the EU forcing a choice on people.
I think that's exactly what it is.
Well, the EU has all sorts of like antitrust stuff where they're really hardcore about it, so in a really good way.
It's funny to look at it on a country-by-country basis. like
didn't
the
look at
adoption
that.
rates. Someone sent that to me on Twitter, and I was like, oh, that's very interesting. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice that finally something else is up there.
Yeah, but
past IE.
My first reaction to this was I was a little sad for Mozilla because they tried really hard and they've always been
so long.
I like that they're independent, and I like, and as much as I mean, you're the only Firefox user here, so
I'm a
it's weird
huge
that I'm
Firefox
saying
user,
this,
so I
but-
totally wish that it was Firefox, but
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
But yeah, it just kind of is upsetting to me because Mozilla they don't have anybody breathing down their neck necessarily about what corporate stuff has. I mean, Google has other agendas.
That's
and
very
Mozilla
nice.
is like, I want to make a great web browser.
The fact of the matter is, though, and I'll say this as a die-hard Firefox user, I am a Firefox fanboy through and through, but Chrome is probably a better browser. It's a better browsing experience in a lot of ways. In the same way that kind of like I would admit that Apple does a lot of things better than Microsoft and Google, on Android and stuff like that. It's just a better end user experience for a lot of people. And Mozilla's come a long way in the past year or two, but they're still not quite where Chrome is.
I think there's also a trust thing where it's like no one knows who Mozilla is in general. Like people aren't like.
Even though I would find them more trustworthy than Google.
Sure, but it's like
But I know
it's
exactly
one
what
of
you
those
mean.
things where like if you don't know anything about any of these companies, it's like I like Google.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Firefox got its big bump when Google promoted it too. So it was, that was until Chrome came along. Firefox was on the uptrend significantly.
Okay, so moving along, and this is actually a really interesting thing. If you subscribe to any cable company, or not any, but quite a few,
internet.
For internet, cable companies are bringing free Wi-Fi, quote unquote, everywhere.
So this is a really cool thing. First of all, I didn't realize this is just something public service announcement. Your cable internet company probably has a lot of free Wi-Fi hotspots around town that you can use. I looked up just Time Warner's free Wi-Fi. Nowhere in Los Angeles is there a place where I can not walk a block and have free Wi-Fi somewhere.
That's
really
insane.
It's amazing.
How does it work? Do they have an app or something?
They do have a free Wi-Fi finder app. I know Time Warner does. Your cable company may as well, and you can just pull it up and on your phone, it'll show you where you are and show you where nearby Wi-Fi hotspots are, and then you go and you sign in with your credentials, the same credentials you would use to pay your bill or whatever.
Interesting.
And so now a lot of these cable companies come together, Time Warner, Xfinity, Cox, and some others, and they're kind of pooling their resources for all of their users. And so now instead of having some Time Warner hotspots and some Cox hotspots and whatever, you just have a hotspot called Cable Wi-Fi, and they're just going to be all around town. And as long as you subscribe to one of the companies that's part of this initiative, you get access to all of the Wi-Fi hotspots. Right now, it's in a number of towns like Los Angeles, New York, Philadelphia, some of the bigger ones, and they want to expand it. But it's really cool because now there's more like 50,000 Wi-Fi hotspots that you can connect to.
Mm-hmm.
So this is now, it's already rolled out to those cities?
I believe so, yes. I think parts of it are still kind of... So like Time Warner's website hasn't really updated to reflect that, I don't think. Or at least from what I can tell, I need to kind of take some time and drive around town and see what I can find. The way they talk about it, they say like it's already rolled out. If you go to cablewifi.com, you can find out more. But a lot of times it's going to your provider's website, but nowhere on Time Warner's website does it really mention this.
That's really interesting.
Even though Cable Wi-Fi mentions Time Warner's. But at the same time, Time Warner also hasn't updated their bill payment system to acknowledge Google Chrome's existence. So
you know what, they sort of have. They've just started. If you have to transition your account, there's a whole thing. But it does now.
Really?
Anyway,
but
it's a whole,
I have a brand new account. It didn't
it's
a month ago.
Pain. Yeah.
At any rate, sometimes these things take a while to catch up. So you may just have to kind of look around town and see what's what if you're in one of these cities.
So to log into these cable Wi-Fi though, I would use some sort of would it prompt me and I
think what you would do is you would log on to the cable Wi-Fi hotspot, and then it would probably ask you to choose your provider, and then type in your credentials. So you need whatever your Comcast email address is or whatever that is to log in.
Yeah. That's such a pain.
It's a pain but you do it once, you get it in LastPass, and then you have instant access to Wi-Fi hotspots across the city.
Yeah, it's definitely not a bad thing, but I had this with AT&T when I had DSL back in the day, and I could go to Starbucks or wherever else they had AT&T hotspots and just sign in, and then I would have Wi-Fi just like this. I didn't use it that much.
Well,
it
you
just
know what,
was
though?
there was a few opportunities where it mattered.
That happens by default now. Like if I go to, I have AT&T on an iPhone. If I go to Starbucks,
if
it
on your
automatically, which is actually super convenient.
That's
what
great.
this
That's
would need to be like
That's
for
really
it to
nice.
be actually
Exactly,
useful.
if
It's
it
like,
worked in that
it
way.
auto logs in because it's like you have an AT&T account.
But
Starbucks uses
the thing
AT&T
is,
Wi-Fi.
It mostly would, because all the networks are the same name. They're all called cable Wi-Fi. Once you connect to it once, you connect to all. Your computer will automatically connect to
but you still gotta
any
sign
network
in.
named cable Wi-Fi. All you need to do is open your browser, and if you have LastPass, it'll go right through.
Well,
In
it's
theory,
fine if you're using a computer, it's fine. But there are
The phone
like
is
the
the-
phone is definitely
or the
nicer.
tablet or whatever.
But the computer, that's a
But
good point. Laptop is...
yeah, there's kind of two different things. It would be really nice to have on the phone, especially with more limited data plans becoming more popular.
Yeah,
but on the
it's just-
computer, and I know you say you don't use it a lot, and neither do I. But it's nice to know that it's there for the rare occasions where I am out.
It's
I
great
don't want to
that-
have to tether my phone.
Exactly.
I remember when we were in New York, I was like spent all day just looking around to find a place with free Wi-Fi and somewhere that I could charge my computer.
Yeah.
But like if I can find free Wi-Fi anywhere, that's so much easier. Instead of having to like search on Yelp for
It seems
coffee
like
shops
it's
that offer
better.
it.
It's better when you're traveling. It's better when you have an emergency and you need to use the internet and you're not at home or what. I don't know. Whatever that we have those emergencies. I don't know how
Yeah.
many other people have those emergencies, but yeah. I mean, it seems like it's. I feel like it's a good thing for for kind of like occasional cases.
It'll just be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm gonna keep my eyes peeled for it as I go around the city.
I want you to try this out and learn more about it because I feel like we could do something.
All right, I'll start driving around Los Angeles with my computer in hand.
All right, now Alan is going to join us via the magic of the internet and tell us a little bit about Hackerspaces, which is something he dove into on his feature last week.
Thanks, guys. So if you want to scratch your DIY itch, whether you want to hack your IKEA furniture into something that's really new and awesome, or you want to get started with electronics and build your own Arduino robot that makes you dinner while you sit on the couch, you probably don't have the space or the tools or maybe not the expertise to do it at home. So what you want to do is get involved in your local hackerspace. They're all over the country, or all over the world, really, and they're easy to find. We wrote about how you can get involved, what they are, and where you can go to learn more about them. But if you want to get involved really quickly, you can go to hackerspaces.org. They have a map that you can zoom in on and see what hackerspaces are in your area. And a lot of hackerspaces do different things. If you want to get into network hacking, like real computer hacking, some hackerspaces offer network equipment that you can hook up to and set up your own LAN and then try to penetrate it. And then other hackerspaces allow you to they got tools, they've got laser cutters, they've got 3D printers and stuff like that, so you can get into that scene too. But most importantly, for whatever the price of membership is, you generally get free access to the facility, you get classes, and you get the benefit of the expertise of the people who are already members, and they're usually willing to help you learn something new. So they're all over the place, they're easy to find, and once you do it, good luck.
All right, thanks, Alan. Very cool. That's it for the news today. We're going to dive into some questions. So our first question comes from a caller.
Hey, Lifehacker. I was wondering what your recommendation was on speeding up the boot and startup process on Windows. When I first get my computers, the boot process is usually under a minute or about a minute, and as time goes on, I know things build up, and it gets to be a lot longer. I was wondering what your recommendation is. Thanks. Love the show.
Well, Whitson, you are the resident Windows speeder upper.
And I'm the resident, my computer takes 1,000,000 years to boot up. I'm not exactly sure why. I think part of it is my motherboard, but this computer takes forever to boot up.
A lot of motherboards have really slow, like, BIOS.
It just takes
loads.
so... I'm just like sitting there like watching it go by. So there are some nice things you can do. A lot of them are really simple. A lot of them you probably already know. One of the things you really should do is go into msconfig and clean out all of your, any startup items you don't need. That's just a given. Also, I'm just going to reiterate this really quickly because we talk about it all the freaking time. But SSD. If you don't have an SSD in your computer, upgrade to an SSD. You will cut your boot time in half. It's insane how much faster it will boot. But that'll only cut in half the part where you're done with the BIOS and you get to like the Windows logo, the flag that's kind of moving. That part will cut in half. The rest of it will stay the same. Some other things you can do, you can kind of go into your BIOS, and there's some features in there, like called quick boot and stuff like that. You can kind of change your drive boot order so it doesn't sit there waiting, looking for a CD in your drive.
You can disable certain, like, checking on certain drives.
Yeah, and so just like little things like that can kind of speed it up a little bit.
Just to back up just 1 second for people who maybe aren't super familiar with like the boot process. Basically what happens is you turn on your computer, it boots up into something called the BIOS, which is like the something input-output system. I don't remember what the B
Basic
is.
Input-output
Basic and basically during that system, is that right? System? Yeah. Basically during that, it's sort of like, I don't know. It's
connecting your hardware, looking at your hard drives and finding out which one of them it wants to boot from, making sure everything's working correctly.
And a lot of that can take actually, for my like Windows computers or my like desktop built computers, that's always the longest thing. It's like you're sitting there and it's looking for examining your drives, like getting all your hardware talking to each other. And it is a lot of times for me, I'll go in and I'll turn off, like, don't look at these hard drives because I'm not even using them. Don't examine them. Don't look for anything there. But that's sort of like for me. So then after all of that BIOS setup is happening, then it goes, okay, where do you want me to boot from? And then it looks for things like your hard drive, CD drive, thumb drive, and you set up in your BIOS what order you want it to look for boot devices. And then once it actually finds the one it's going to boot from, it loads your operating system. That all happens from your hard drive or whatever the source is.
And when loading the operating system is the thing that's pretty easy to cut down with things like an SSD and cutting up your startup programs. The BIOS thing is a little bit harder to speed up. There are a few things you can do, but a lot of times it just depends on your motherboard. And so that's just a matter of what kind of computer you have or kind of computer you've built. I've also found that if you do have multiple operating systems on your computer, you can speed up your the timeout. Like it'll like wait 10 seconds. It'll be like, or 20 seconds. Mine waits for a really long time. It's like, do you want to boot into Windows 7 or your Windows 8 beta? And if you're sitting next to your computer, you can just hit enter. But if I'm like making lunch or something, then it's gonna take an extra 20 seconds to boot up. Which is just kind of annoying. So you can shorten that as well.
Interestingly, though, last week Microsoft posted to their blog, their developing Windows 8 blog or whatever it's called, about Windows 8's crazy fast boot times.
It's so fast that you couldn't even interrupt it to go into things like safe mode, which was humorous. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty awesome that you've gotten it that fast. But again, that makes me think, now that we're talking about this, that's still only after the BIOS. So I'm still waiting 30 seconds to get to that point, and then it's still... So it's I'm instantaneous in that sense.
Is there any sort of... I haven't looked into this, but with Windows 8, is there any sort of like hardware integration updates for like BIOS that's going to make a difference with that? Where it's like going to be a true like quick boot that's integrated from start to finish? Or, I don't know.
It's possible if you've bought maybe like a Windows Signature PC or something like that, or obviously a Windows 8 tablet.
Right.
But I think if you just install it on a big desktop computer like this,
it's
going to be the same difference. I would also say my computer's a few years old. I'm not sure. I know that they've made some crazy improvements in BIOSes recently. If you buy like a new motherboard or you build a new computer, first they have Click BIOS now, where you can like actually use. Yeah. Oh my God. Some of the stuff they've done, they have like ones where it's a picture of the motherboard and you click on the thing you want to edit. Like you be like, I want to change like my hard drive, so you click on the hard drive.
That's really cool.
It's just so much easier to navigate. So with that may come crazy speed improvements too. I don't know, but if you're in the market for a new computer, that may be something to kind of research as you're looking at motherboards.
Cool. Yeah. And then lastly, just really quickly, there's a really cool app for Windows called Saludo.
Yes.
And it examines in the second half of your boot up, when it's like starting the Windows environment and everything and booting into a state where it's like, okay, everything's loaded. It examines all the applications that load during that, and it sort of gives you an idea what's slowing your boot time down.
Which ones are non-essential. And if you're kind of an advanced user, you probably don't need it. You can see what those things are in msconfig. Saludo has become, and Saludo does a lot more than that too. They're now a fantastic app for helping like your remote parents support, or other less tech savvy friends deal with that kind of stuff. So we still love it. Go check it out. Absolutely.
Cool. Okay.
That's all.
Reader Hajazi asks, the only thing that annoys me in Chrome is not having an option to automatically delete web history and cache after closing the browser. Is there any hidden option or extension that will do that for me?
There's actually a setting in Chrome It's in the I didn't know about it because I don't delete anything, but if you it's in the content settings, which you can get to by going to Chrome://settings/content, and then within there's a message. I wrote this down. Clear cookies and other site plugins, plugin data when I quit my browser, and it's towards the bottom of of that cluster of the content preferences. So if you just check that off, then it does it. It's just kind of hidden in there.
Easy.
One other, this is just a side note, supplementary side note, but if you are a fan of keyboard shortcuts, Command-Shift-Delete and I believe Control-Shift-Delete probably on Windows will open you straight to what is it? It's basically where you can clear your cookies.
Nothing happened
manually.
when you clicked it just now.
Well, I'm gonna blame. There we go. I think Google Docs was getting in the way of that shortcut. Anyway, it opens
handy.
the clear browsing data, and you can do it for the past day, past hour, past week, last 4 weeks,
handy.
beginning of time, and you
really
can
nice.
select browsing history, download history, cache, cookies, etc.
You could also just use incognito mode if you're doing this every time.
Yeah,
I'm not sure why you would necessarily do it every time you're in your browser, but if you just want to do
Good
it
point.
every once in a while, you could always use incognito mode, and you can open an incognito window with Command-Shift-N or Control-Shift-N on Windows.
Yeah, that's a good point though, because that essentially is what incognito does.
That's exactly what it is.
Clears every history, but
it doesn't even keep the history.
Right.
Like if you accidentally close a tab, you can't reopen it because you didn't save it.
But it also like while you have it open during that session, all of your cookies still are alive. So it is essentially the same idea.
Yeah, but without the history, I think that's kind of a downside. I think that's why you would want to have this.
Your thing's better.
It is. I'm just saying, if it's not something, if it's not something you want to do every time, if you want to do it like every other time, or only when you're performing a certain task, you don't necessarily have to delete all your history. I know I never delete my history. I thought I deleted it by accident the other day, and I was freaking out because I go into it so often to try and find that site that I was looking at the other day that had that information.
Use my history.
Oh my god, I use it so often.
Google is my history. Okay. Our next question comes from a caller.
Hello, Lifehacker. I was thinking of buying an Apple TV, the new third generation ones, to install XBMC, but I yet to find a jailbreaking method so I can install it. I'm very hesitant of buying the new one. Is there a difference between the first generation and the third generation and the second generation versions? Thank you. Love the show.
Okay, so this is a good question. The Apple TV is a really great device to run XBMC on. It works really well, and then it also gets all of the jelly you get with XBMC, which is, YouTube, and then their whole, buy TV shows and movies, Netflix streaming, all of that stuff. It's really handy. The Apple TV 2, the main difference between the two devices, before we get into Jailbreak and XBMC, is that the Apple TV 3, the new Apple TV, it outputs it to 1080p, whereas the Apple TV 2 is 720p. Difference negligible, but you want high, and it also has a slightly faster processor and stuff like that, I believe. They're not that different. However, when it comes to jailbreaking, there is a difference right now, and the difference is actually the third Apple TV the third generation is not currently tethered jailbreak.
Oh,
it's
so there's
only the second gen Apple TV running 5.0.1 or iOS 5.1.1. So it's the second gen that has a tethered jailbreak with the latest software. Anyway,
so if jailbreaking is important to you, don't buy the Apple TV 3 yet.
So apparently, so still wait on that. So if you want to get one, you really want to jailbreak now, Apple TV 2, 100%.
But but apparently, according to Dodges, they cost more.
Yeah,
if you're buying
getting
them
used one.
because they're so awesome for jailbreaking. If you buy one, you might be paying twice the amount of money.
Yeah.
For an older model.
Is still, if it's not.
This is one of those rare situations. No, but I'm just saying this is one of those rare situations where I would just wait a little bit just to kind of see what happens with this. We're kind of in the middle. You're just at a bad spot right now to be in the market for an Apple TV if you want to jailbreak. So I'd hold off.
Yeah, because Firecore may figure out something once the regular jailbreak is out.
So anyway, something to keep in mind, food for thought. We also have we have a guide for jailbreaking the Apple TV 2. You can search out on Lifehacker. We have a guide for installing XBMC on Apple TV 2. This is all, of course, assuming that you're able to jailbreak it. It has the proper software and whatever.
Yeah, and we'll have that in the show notes also.
Yep.
But before we move on from this question, I just want to pimp a couple of other devices because I think that they're good alternatives. If you want, I mean, like I've been using Google TV, which I apparently I always thought was terrible. When it came out, I tried it and it was awful. And now you can get Plex on it, and Plex is basically XBMC, and you can run the server on whatever and blah blah blah. We've talked about it a lot, but it works really well, and I think it's a good alternative. Google TV is generally a little more expensive than an Apple TV, but you can install a whole bunch of crap on there. So I think that's that's an alternative if you don't want to deal with this whole jailbreaking mess right now. But then also Western Digital has a live, I can never remember what the name is because it's always really complicated, but it's Western Digital HD Live TV box extravaganza. And it's but it's not XBMC, but it does a lot of live streaming, and they've come a long way. I actually used a new one recently, and I didn't realize how far they've come. They're really good now. So that's another option.
And of course, you can always just buy a cheap net top or build a cheap net top and install XBMC.
Yeah, we forget about that now that there are all these little boxes you can hack. But
I still think that's the best route to go because you have complete control over everything. You can do so much more with it. You can play Blu-rays on it or whatever. You can install a cable card and watch live TV and record live TV on it. It's awesome. It takes a lot more work, but you can make a pretty kick-ass box.
Yeah, there are a lot of good options.
All right, so that is it for the questions. Now let's jump into some quick downloads. The first downloads, there aren't actually downloads, they are little mini web apps that we've been putting into some of our features lately. They're basically little JavaScript things that I've been helping these guys out to bolster their posts. So the first is the headphones. Is it legal to wear headphones while you're driving in your state app? Basically, it's just a little interactive thing. You open it up and you get a map of the United States, and you click on a state, and it tells you whether or not it's legal to wear headphones while you're driving, which is something I'd always sort of wondered about because it doesn't seem like it would be legal. In many states, the situation is basically you can have one headphone in and not in both ears. That's sort of like the line. But it's interesting, and there is a ton of difference across states. So
surprisingly, it's legal in some places.
Yeah,
I was surprised. I mean, I do it anyway, but they can't really pull you over for it here or most places. But and most of the time they'll just be like, "Don't do that."
Yeah. Next, there's the little 20-minute mini exercise generator. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. I've been doing these like 20-minute exercise routines that are they're called Sworkit exercises, and basically the idea is that you do different kinds of exercise for a certain muscle group or for your whole body or whatever, and you do it every day, and you do it for 20 minutes, and it's pretty tough, but if you don't have a lot of time, it's great. And so you helped me create a thing where you click a button to generate a random 20-minute workout, and then it just gives you the whole thing and teaches you how to do it. So we did that, and there's actually someone made a real app out of this. I think they just had this idea at the same time we did. I don't think they're like, oh, hey, Lifehacker's doing this, I'm going to make an app. But we'll talk about that one in a second.
Huh, okay. And last, there was the key
remapper
shortcut creator thing.
We've talked a lot about programs like AutoHotkey, which let you basically remap any key on your keyboard or create any keyboard shortcut you want. But I started using it for this really specific purpose. I had all these keys on my keyboard that I just wasn't using, didn't even know what they do. I still only kind of know what the pause break key does, and like print screen, I stopped using that, once I turned 11. So I started remapping these things.
It's a big
when
coming of age
when I
moment
discovered
for you.
actual screenshot tools was what that really meant.
What was it about being 11 years old that it's time for me to grow up
and download a screenshot tool? But so I'm now using these things to do awesome things like put my computer to sleep, bring out my screensaver, eject flash drives and things like that aren't keyboard shortcuts that are necessarily built into Windows, or their keyboard shortcuts are kind of awkward in Windows.
The flash drive is a really handy one.
Yeah, and so you can just tap a key and so what we did is we put together a little tool that lets you 20 of the most unused keys on keyboards. You can click on it, click on one of our handy actions that we've put together, and remap all of your keys and copy and paste some text into an auto hotkey script. So it's cool because you can kind of get started without a hotkey without having to actually learn the code and start scripting your own stuff. It's just a click, 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 and you have some new keyboard shortcuts. So check that out.
Mailstore is a free Windows application that backs up your email to your desktop, and it does it in a very simple sort of like you fire it up, you put in your email account, and it supports most webmail accounts. Put in your credentials, hit a button, and it backs it all up to your desktop. It's not like a full-fledged thing like, say, Thunderbird, where it's also a client. It's just a backup tool. It's really cool. It's free, and if you need a backup for your email, which everyone should be doing, and you don't have a solution working right now, you should check it out.
So Windownaut, at first glance, is an app much like many others that brings kind of a Windows 7 arrow snap functionality to your Mac. You can snap windows to the right or left side of the screen, to the top, to the bottom, to the corners, but it lets you do that with customizable keyboard shortcuts and lets you create tons of different layouts. The really cool thing that it also does that you've probably never seen an app do before is give extra functions to those 3 little traffic light buttons in the top left corner of your Mac's windows. By right-clicking on the red X, for example, you can quit an app instead of just closing the window. By right-clicking on the minimize button, you can show the current document in the Finder. Things like that. It just brings a ton of new window management options to your Mac, and it's pretty cheap, easy to use, so go check it out.
First up, we have Sworkit, I think it's pronounced that way, for Android, and it's also on the web and for iOS, so kind of whatever you got, you're good. And it is just like we were talking about earlier with that 20-minute exercise thing we put together. This is an app that will create a circuit routine for any exercise of a muscle group or your full body or even yoga that will last 5 minutes or 60 minutes, whatever you want. You can choose the amount of time you want, what kind of workout you want to do, and it will generate it and will show you very clear and simple instructions in kind of like a 1, 2, 3 step picture thing, and it will even time you while you're doing the exercise. So it's really like it's a nice upgrade to what we did, honestly, and it's free, so you can download it for your phone, or you can just use it online if you're hanging out at home and get in a workout whenever you've got the time. For the iPhone, a web app that we like called RedyForZero, they released an iPhone app now, and that's basically a way to manage your debt. If you have some debt and you need a plan to get out of debt, it's a really nice web app. You sign up and it will give you suggestions and help you get a plan together to get out of debt. The iPhone app you're not going to be using it for necessarily managing that plan so much, but it will give you alerts and help you keep on top of bill payments and all that stuff. So it's a really nice extension to the web app. So if you need to get out of debt, definitely check it out.
All right, that's it for this week. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
If you'd like to ask us a question, send an email to tips+asklhshow@lifehacker.com. Alternatively, leave us a message at 347-687-8109. Try to keep your questions to a few sentences or 30 seconds so we can keep the show moving quickly. And thanks for listening, watching, or however else you get this podcast from the internet to your brain. This episode was recorded in Los Angeles, California by the Lifehacker staff and edited into a more consumable form by Kyle J. Norris. We'd also like to thank all the people who contributed images to our podcast to help make it look extra nice.
News.
Please
Okay.
make that the new sound for the graphic.
We'll do this for all of them.
Yeah.
Make it like roboticized.
News.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I personally, well, no, not necessarily. Here's the thing. Google does.